Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the transatlantic Dl Ml800 narrow style mortise lock set. It's available in 3 different finishes, and the one that we're looking at here is the Us15 or satin nickel finish. I have all the components removed from the box, and I'll show them to you all at once. We'll go over some dimensional properties. First of all, there's a link below this video to the installation instructions, and while those are certainly excellent in terms of showing you the steps, the simple steps actually, how to go about installing the lock, what they don't give you is any dimensional properties. So, and that's obviously a very common question for clients to ask, and we're going to go over that. First of all, first impression is that it's a certainly well-made mechanism. I wouldn't hesitate to use this at all. You know, European style, some people might call this narrow back set. You'll see these on patio doors by major domestic manufacturers of residential patio doors. Obviously, this is the type that's going to feature a profile cylinder down below, which I'll show you in a moment, and then your trim up above. So, dimensionally, let's go over it now. So these dimensions will be important to you if you are trying to determine if this is a potential candidate for replacing what you have. Overall height of that body is about 9.5. Let me measure it here on my desk so I can be very accurate. Yeah, it's about 9 5/8 is the overall height, 9 5/8. The width of the faceplate, 1 inch. Projection or depth of the body, about 2 3/8. To the center of your profile cylinder is 1 3/4. And then to the trim, obviously, that's going to be the same. Now the lock is not handed, meaning that it can be reversed. So from the factory, it's going to be set up as either a left hand or a right hand reverse. To reverse this, and those steps are in the installation instructions. Let's go through them one at a time at this point. Step 1 is to have your mortise made, and the truth of the matter is, they don't give you any of the dimensions. You're going to have to scale it off of the actual hardware. Is the problem. Okay, so step 1 shows holes that you're going to need, and it's hard, you can't see from the lock body all of the holes that are necessary, but we'll go over that when we get to the trim. But for sure you're going to need the hole here, the hole here. You're going to need the hole for the screw for the trim here, and then the one that's up here. Then it shows that there's another one down below the lock case, but we'll do a reality check on that in a moment. So you're going to do your edge preparation. We're still in step 1. You're going to do your edge preparation, which in my definition is 2 different preps. First there'll be the body, which is for the mechanism itself, and then there'll be the plate. So the body, it's really handy to have a caliper when you're doing this sort of work, but the body prep is going to be the thickness of this body with a reasonable amount of margin so that you can fit this into the cavity without any unintentional compression. Then of course the height of this. So the height of the lock case is 7 inch. So I'm going to be real tempted to make that 7 1/8. Square my corners out. Okay, because this body is rectangular. However, you can see I've got a good margin to the first hole, so I could certainly cheek that up a little bit either side. Then the thickness of the body, it's 5/8, and because that face is 1 inch, you could certainly cheek that out to 3/4 inch. You'd be okay there. Okay. So what I would end up doing is making sure that my body fit correctly, both the length and the width. Then I would come with my face. So you've got your body and then your plate, or your face plate. And that's going to be your overall height by your width, That's a 1 inch wide. So if you have if you had a 1 inch router bit, that would be nice because it would give you the proper radius. Okay, so keep that in mind. So as you're determining what you're going to set your router up to do this, you'll want to have the hardware in hand. But we've given the rough dimensions about how to go about doing it. So if you have any questions on that part, feel free to reach out to me. We'll discuss that separately. Now moving to step 2 and step 3, and step 2, 2A, and 2B, they show how to reverse the hand. Like I said earlier, this is going to be appropriate for either a left hand, which is a in swing inherently, or a right hand reverse, which would swing out towards you this way. So in order to reverse it, you're going to depress the latch, and then you can see that you expose that screw there. And then with the latch depressed, remove the screw, take the latch out, turn it 180 degrees, and insert it back in. Now keep in mind there's a spring here, so you're not so be aware of it. It's fixed inside of there, so it's not going to move on you. I can see that the spring is held in with this screw, so it's not going to jump out. But just keep in mind it's there. Okay, so depress, remove the screw, carefully pull the latch out 180 degrees, insert it back in all the way, hold it down, and then reinstall the screw. That's very simple. Okay, now step 3. Once you've got it handed properly, moving to step 3, what you've got is getting the lock installed. That's step 3. Now, before, we should have discussed earlier, if you're going to mortise this in a new installation, you're really going to have to lay out where this is going to be installed vertically on the door. So what you're dealing with here is, if it's a new installation, first of all, you're going to have to come up with a strike plate, meaning the strike plate that's included, you'll have to review that. We're going to jump to that part right now. Okay, it's completely reversible. It's symmetrical, so you can go with it either way. But you're going to have to determine where you want this to be height-wise so that everything is lined up properly. Just looking at this, if it was me, I would center my latch bolt over this area here, depending on the hand. Okay, so I would take my center line of the preparation from the top, and then my center line here, and that's how I would go about determining it. Okay. You got a lot of play there, obviously, but you're going to want the lip of that beveled strike to hit this area here first. Meaning, I've got the latch backwards, but as we're approaching it, you're going to want that area here to be the back side of the latch. Okay. So without a template and without instructions as to go about, in terms of how to go about installing. So there are times when you have hardware and you need to do a new installation and you have no choice but to wait for the hardware to arrive. And that is, quite frankly, the best case scenario that you can encounter sometimes with unknown types of hardware. Now, so back to the installation instructions. Step 3 basically says install the lock body to the door. At that point, if you don't have function holes drilled, I would not be doing that at that point. I would, moving to step 4, I would have my 2 trim plates, or my escutcheons. And these plates are identical. Okay? You'll have a plastic bushing here for the trim, which we'll go over in a moment, which will look just like that. Okay? Now what I would end up doing is, when I determine my function holes, you can now see where those holes have to come. Okay, so as shown, you'll need a hole up here for this area that's half moon cutout, not the hole here, but the bolt will go right through the top of the case. Then your trim for the spindle, then this hole, then the profile cylinder, then the hole all the way down there that will be below the lock case. So at that point, you're going to need to measure the edge of the door to the center of your holes, determining the back set, and then determine, per the hardware, what size those holes need to be. Now keep in mind your trim is going to be inch and 3/16 or so wide, and since we've got the tape measure, about 8 1/4 tall. So you obviously have a little bit of play with the size of the holes. I do like to make them a 1/16 or an 1/8 larger, because what I am able to do at that point is get my trim perfect, placed perfectly vertical, okay, on the door, be able to tighten the screws down with no binding, and it works out really well. Okay, so without a template, you again are stuck with doing a reality check on what you're going to actually end up doing. So the lock body, I wouldn't put it in until I determined my function holes. Then I would secure it after I've drilled my function holes and using my hardware as a reality check along the way. Step 4 shows the installation of the hardware, and basically what that calls out is the plates to be attached to the door, and probably what I would do is install the 2 plates. I would run 1 screw through the door at the very top. There are 3 packages of sex bolts, and if you're keeping count, that's the exact quantity that you would need. I would install the top plate with 1 sex bolt, and I would leave it loose. Not so that they were really loose, but just so that I could position them and move them on the door. I would then go and get my profile cylinder installed. Really handsome profile cylinder that they have here. Satin nickel. This is a single cylinder model. That is a Schlage C keyway is what that is. So I would get that installed onto the door. This is the bolt that you use to secure it right through the hole here. And once that profile cylinder is installed through the door in the lock case, okay, you'll then be able to run that bolt right through there and secure it, because it's tapped here for the bolt. So I would get that installed. I'd make sure that that was nice and operated very well. Then I would do my lock trim, and let's go over that material next. So 3 sex bolts, that's for the trim. That's the bolt to hold the profile cylinder in. After that, you're going to have your spindle and an Allen wrench, and that's going to go with your 2 pieces of lever hardware. Okay, obviously 1 of each hand. Set screws are already installed for that. You will get machine screw, two larger screws to hold the lock case on, which is this screw here and the other one here. Then the other 3 screws for the strike plate that we reviewed earlier. And that you're possibly going to mortise. You might surface mount that, whatever your condition calls for. But then you get 2 dust boxes as well, 2 of them. And those will be important to have on the back side of your preparation, so that the inside hole, you're not looking at routed or chiseled wood. And at that point, we've really covered all of the parts. So again, you've got your lock body, you've got your strike, your profile cylinder, your 2 keys, and then the cylinder to hold it into the lock body, your 3 sex bolts, the rest of your screws for the strike and for the lock body, your 2 escutcheon plates. There will be 2 plastic bushings. The other one fell on the floor. Your 2 levers, spindle and Allen wrench, 2 dust boxes. That's everything. So this video should be able to give you enough information to determine whether or not this is the appropriate item for your replacement of a piece of existing hardware. and will certainly get you down the road if you're doing a new installation. I've mortised for, I think I've mortised for every piece of hardware that there is in wood doors and frames. So by all means, feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to assist. But you know, it's body prep, plate prep. What's the height? Your function holes, whatever back set is determined. And like I said earlier, the most powerful tool I think that you can use is one of these when you're doing this kind of stuff, because you can translate this over to your router preparation very well. So if you know how large something is, you can stick that right into the edge of the door and see real quickly what you're dealing with. Transatlantic is a very, well, they're a full-line importer of builders hardware. They're a company that has been in business for several decades, and my family has been buying from them for decades. And I wouldn't hesitate to use any of their products. Good customer service, good support, good quality products, especially for the dollar spent. If you have any questions on the Transatlantic Dl Ml800, this one was in a US15 satin nickel finish, or any other transatlantic product, please feel free to reach out to us.